You state that only 2% of proposed amendments have been ratified, yet that paltry number includes the 16th, 17th, and 18th Amendments, the last of which was the only one repealed. It is obvious that harmful amendments can get passed. Isn't it possible such bad amendments could again get ratified?
There's one thing you have to understand. The sentiment of the time of the nation. In 1913, when the 17th Amendment came up for ratification, several of the states had open Senate positions and had them open for 7 or 8 years. The people did not think that, and neither did the states for that matter, think that they were doing justice by allowing these Senate positions to stay open. So, the states were actually part of the request in Congress to write amendment for the 17th Amendment to allow the senators to be voted on by the populace. They didn't realize that they were going to lose 1/3 of the checks and balances in the Constitution when they did that. Because after all, if you go back and think about it, the House of Representatives represents the people. The Senate was representing the states. There's two not necessarily opposing, but not necessarily always for each other's sides. Because back then, the states had all the power. And then the president and the administration, they represented the government. But by voting in the 17th Amendment like they did, which was, by the way, that's what people wanted at that time, okay, the overall sentiment, they caused that situation. However, that sentiment has changed tremendously now. If you ask 100% of the people around here, you're going to get 75% that says, that was a bad idea, we need to change it. Now, the 16th Amendment was a taxing amendment. They have taken on basically they've done more than what that amendment actually says they could do. Okay? And the reason for that is, and I hope I don't offend any lawyers out here, but there are lawyers in the Congress, and they are able to twist things away or twist words around to mean what they want them to mean. Now, the 16th Amendment, like the 17th Amendment, we'd just come out of World War I. We were needing some way, okay, or excuse me, we just came out of the Civil War, and we were needing some way to help pay for our war debts. There was the Teddy Roosevelt, the war that Teddy Roosevelt was in. I'm sorry, which one it was. But we had gotten a massive amount of debt. And they couldn't see any way to get out of it other than a taxing authority. And so they somehow convinced the people that, hey, we're going to pull these taxes, but then after we get this paid off, we'll stop it. We'll get rid of it. Yeah, and it didn't stop, did it? No, it stayed there. They fooled the people again. Like I said, sometimes people get fooled on things. And of course, the sentiment was that, hey, we need to get this taken care of. And we know why the 18th Amendment was abolished, but everybody likes to do a little drinking.
I need to make this real quick. We're going to take questions until 10 till 1, and then Joanne's going to be here, so please don't be offended if I don't get everybody's question. Currently, President and Congress simply ignore our Constitution. What makes you think they would honor new amendments that restrict their power?
That's a really good question. That is an excellent question. What this is going to do, if you think about the power of the people, once these amendments are written, and it takes 38 states to ratify, the population of those 38 states are now telling Congress, you better do this, and you better follow it. Or there's going to be some penalties to pay. It's kind of like this. I kind of look at it like this. You're that old farmer out there that's been plowing in the field, and that old mule has gotten pretty doggone stubborn and hot and tired. You've got to get his attention. So what do you do with that 2x4? You got to whack him across the head. And this is kind of a whack across the head. Okay? It's telling them that the people are behind this, and this is what we want. And if you don't start doing what we want you to do, there's going to be some consequences.
Who pays for such convention of states?
The states will pay for the convention of states. They will pay for their representatives. They'll select their representatives, and they will financially support those representatives. It will not come out of Congress. It will not come out of the federal budget.
Will the number of delegates to such a convention be allocated the same way that senators and representatives are allocated to the states?
No. The states will make up their own rules as to how many representatives they feel like they need. The number is usually going to be somewhere between 3 and 7, could be as much as 11. But you have to remember this. Each state only gets one vote. One vote, one state. So it doesn't make any difference. They could have 100 delegates, and it wouldn't make any difference. If that state has 100 delegates and 50 of them vote yes for this amendment and 50 of them vote no for this amendment, then guess what? They don't get a vote. It's thrown out. And that's happened during the Constitutional Convention as well. So the idea is to have an odd number, usually somewhere in the neighborhood between 3 and 7. Now, Robert's Rule of Orders and also rules for state conventions will be coming into play. We've got history on our side. 35 different conventions of states have occurred, either before or after the Constitutional Convention. Did you realize there was one in 1861? That one was by 10 states got together to try to stop the Civil War. They gave Congress some amendments and some actions, and Congress ignored them. And guess what happened? Civil War occurred. We lost 500,000 good American citizens. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It is my understanding that Phyllis Schlafly is against this. Do you know why?
Yes, because she always has been against it. And she's 90-some-odd years old, and she will not change her mind. The problem is this. Phyllis Schlafly and Eagle Forum have done a world of good for this country. They've brought things to attention. They've brought things to courts. They've done several wonderful, wonderful things. They claim, though, to be lovers of the Constitution. And for some reason, and I don't really know for sure exactly what it is, unless it's the letter that she got from Judge Warren Berger, which is that letter right there, which you can't read, but I can basically tell you what it's about. This is the only thing she's against. She's against an Article 5 because, and they instigate and say that it's going to be a runaway convention like the last one. Well, wait a minute, time out. Well, there never was a runaway convention. You can't control what's going on. Once the convention is called, you can do any kind of amendment you want. Nay, that's not true. If the applications state a specific purpose for the convention, then only those amendments that are germane to that purpose will be allowed. And it will, and any court will hold that. Any court. By the way, there has been 4 Supreme Court rulings on Article 5. And every one of those Supreme Court rulings have said that Article 5 is plain in what it says. There's no mistaking in what the letter is that it means in Article 5. It says exactly what it means. I'm sorry, go ahead.
How many amendments are they looking at?
I really don't know that for sure. That's going to be up to the states. I know that there's a huge, huge push by 2 different organizations for a balanced budget amendment. So that's more than likely going to be one. There's a huge push for term limits for both elected and non-elected officials. I would suspect that you could probably go through and pick a portion of those amendments that are in Mark Levin's book, the Liberty Amendments. But just remember, the only amendments that can be proposed are those that are applicable to the application.
What if Congress refuses to call the convention?
Well, okay, sure, they could probably stand up there and refuse to call the convention, but they'll be drawn and quartered in the Supreme Court because it's plain. They have no choice. Once they have the 34 applications under the same subject matter, they have no choice. They have to call it. And it can go in court, and it will win. So this will happen if we get what we need. If we get the 34 states.
We should also restore federalism by respecting the 17th Amendment and restoring power to the states by calling for election of U.S. senators by the state legislatures and not by the popular vote. They should also be paid by the state and not the federal treasury.
Is that a question?
I think it's more of a statement, but I do try to...
I'm going to say that I sort of agree with that, in that I would revoke or repeal the 17th Amendment and put it back the way it was. Then, therefore, yes, the states would pay for their own senators. And they would be paid by the states. They would not be beholden to the federal government. Yeah.
What power do the people have over Congress except to vote them out of office? That's a good question. It's a difficult one because, and the reason I say that, obviously, I was in August the 28th in Washington, D.C. when Glenn Beck had his big meeting there, and they refused to acknowledge over 1 million people being at that. I've got pictures. I can stand here and tell you. I stood up at the Washington Monument and looked down over all the people, and there was well over 1 million people. Plus, there was been another, and it's mainly only because the drive-by media has not acknowledged it. If the drive-by media and the media would have acknowledged it, Congress would have acknowledged it and had have known it. They knew how many were there. You can bet, but they were shaking in their boots. They just didn't want to let anybody know that. You remember seeing that not commercial, but that news reel where Nancy Pelosi, when they passed the health bill, she was walking with those arm in arm with those representatives and carrying that huge gavel and smiling like a big possum. Yeah. She knew she better smile because there was a lot of folks that was not too happy with her at that time. Why pass more laws until the ones we have, specifically the 10th Amendment, are followed? I assume you're probably talking about the ability for nullification. That's a good idea. The only problem is I want someone who's with nullification to show me one single time where it's ever held up. One single time in a court case. It never has.
That was my question.
Yeah.
We're just not following the 10th Amendment. If we do that, that'll handle most of this stuff.
I agree 100% with you. If we were following the whole Constitution, we wouldn't be having this talk.
So why are more laws going to, other than they feel our pressure? But
well, they don't think that we are that concerned. They have seen over the past 80 years, actually the past 100 years, because it started back in the early 1900s, okay? When people became, it's like, okay, you're Congress, you do what you need to do, we trust you to take care of it. Well, we've trusted them for so long that they have overrun and not done what was right for the people. And now then, we've got people that are standing up and saying, look, it's time to stop this nonsense. You know, and basically it's our fault. It is our fault. You know, I'm just as much to blame as anybody else because I sat here with apathy like the others. You know, and you're absolutely right. We should follow the 10th Amendment. We should follow every single amendment and every single article in the Constitution. But they're only following what they think they want to follow. So basically what this is going to do is, like I said, it's going to be like a two before in the head to that mule. We're going to get their attention. Okay? And if they don't follow it, then there's only one other course of action, of which I don't want to talk about.
I think they want a comment on this.
Okay.
The phrase, "we the people," in the preamble should read, "we the people of," and it's got, I can't read the first one, but New York, New Hampshire, something, Delaware, etc. But because only 9 states were required to establish the new government, Governor Morris, the chairman of the Committee of Style, changed it to read as it does now. This is used to take power away from the states. I think they want you to comment on it.
Wow. I don't really think that that's what has occurred. Yes, it only took 9 states to ratify the new Constitution, but you got to remember back before that, that's the new process. The new process was ratified under the old Articles of Confederation. So we did follow that. Okay? It's not taking the power away from the people. The power was supposed to be in the states. The problem was, and the reason that they decided that they did not want a unanimous consent was because to get all 13 states to be unanimous on any subject they knew was going to be very difficult. So they felt that if they got 3/4 of the nation to agree, then that was considered unanimous. Or not unanimous, but it was considered the vast majority.
The government is using one set of rules while we, the people, are following the rule of law. How can we ever win?
Well, I'm going to say this. The only way we can win is if we let our voices be heard. And to yet, I don't think we've screamed loud enough. Okay? I don't think we've made enough noise. We have to make a lot more. More noise than we've ever made before. You know, they're used to us being apathetic. They're used to us just seeing that things go along that they've done and say, well, okay, that's fine, we'll just let it go. But the problem is we need to stand up, and not just in groups of 100 or 1,000, we need to be tens of thousands. And we can do that. And that's what we're trying to do with the Convention of States, is we're bringing together 34 states at minimum, 38 states, and you take into consideration of the ratification. Now, even the least populated states, if you take 38 states, how many millions of people is that? Several million. Standing up with a loud voice saying, this is what we want, and we want you to follow it. Now, one of our ex-presidents has already stated to Mr. Obama, when he was trying to write an executive order basically amending the Second Amendment, one of our ex-presidents told him and warned him he better not do that. Because that ex-president, and it wasn't George Bush, that ex-president knew what the populace of the American people were and how strongly they feel about their Constitution.
I don't have any more questions, but Joanne's not here yet. Do you have anything you would like to continue telling us?
Let me say this, everybody. Joanne just texted me a minute ago, which I've got to get onto her for texting while driving.
But she'll be here in about 2 minutes. So she said if anybody needs to go, please proceed. Otherwise, she'll be here and we'll do a update.
Anybody want to watch Rick take on Joanne? Any bets who wins?
I want to thank you all for coming. Please let me know on your cards your feelings of how the presentation went, if you're for or against, or you don't consider, don't care one way or the other. Also, a couple of, if you've read Mark Levin's book, that's really good. If you want to get a good understanding of how they put the Constitution together and what went into it, first of all, go back and look at what happened at the Annapolis Convention in 1786 and what was written to the Congress at that time, and then get this book, The Constitutional Convention, a narrative of the notes. It's a narrative history from the notes of James Madison, and it's by Edward Larson and Michael Winship. There's actual reading is only about 205 or 10 pages, but it gave me a real strong insight as to what these guys went through to come up with this Constitution. The author was Edward J. Larson and Michael P. Winship. Book's only like $12 at Amazon. Obviously, it's not a real hot seller.
Could you say the name again? We have.
Yeah, it's